You're listening to episode number 3 of season 4, Tea Time, the podcast with Cassia Marina. And this episode is titled Looking Ahead: Visions, Plans, and Goals. So let's get started. So, visions. What are my visions, my plans, and my goals? So, coming off of a really great year, that was 2020 business wise, I felt like I recovered. I went through a lot of metamorphosis, getting back in touch with the badass that I am. I'm not gonna front. I remembered I had to get back in touch with Cassia, who launched her brand, her personal brand and business over on Facebook. I had a lot of things that I went through in 2019 that shaked my confidence, that made me forget my power essentially, right? There were a lot of betrayals and so forth and so forth. It was just a lot of different experiences. And I needed to get back to Cassia, you know? And I just refocused. And I don't know what it is, but I felt as though when I got back in a coaching program and space, like that was a, how to put it? That was like a byproduct. There wasn't anything in particular that the program had in it that made me remember my power. But I think it was just being around like-minded individuals all over again. When I invested in coaching back in 2017, I wouldn't say I was broken, but I was drained. I felt like I was just around people who didn't get it. And I was around people who didn't get my vision and it just wasn't in alignment. And you just have to change your environment. And when you can't change your environment physically, you do it virtually. And you have to surround yourself with the right people. And just being adjacent to awesome women doing things it was just it was just life changing. I like, it sounds so cliche, but it did something for me on a deeper level beyond the material that you loot, you know? So it was like going on a retreat, you know? And, speaking of retreat, that kind of ties into where I see some of my vision for my brand going. And I won't dive too much into that. Yes, this episode is all about, visions, plans, and goals. But of course, some things have to remain top secret, and some things you just have to wait to hear about it when it drops, right? But what you can do is head on over to cassiamarina.me/VIP list. I'll leave the link in the show notes because I always second guess, is it VIP list or is it VIP dash list? So check the show notes and you will find the list. Get on my VIP list, and anything that drops, any developments, anything that I'm launching, anything that I'm having, hosting, you'll be in the know. You'll be the first to know. And you're going to be on the VIP list if you download my brand playbook. That essentially is my complete brand system that helps you launch your business in 30 days. Launch your business online. And you might be like, well, I already have an online business. Yeah, but you need the complete brand system. Something needs to change. I'm pretty sure you are going to gain some value from that. And it's free. So go download it and learn my 5-step framework, right? So, anyway, continuing. So my visions for the future. So I've set an income goal that I will not be sharing, sorry. And that's not what is important. The number is not important because what is important is what is your number, right? So what I'm sharing with you here today is for you to figure out what you want to take from this episode that you can apply to your business. So my numbers don't matter. So my number, right? I have always set my monthly income goals by month. Coming off of employee mindset, we sometimes still think in terms of months or weeks or bi-weekly, right? And again, not just because of employee mindset, but that's the social construct. That's when the bills come, right? The bills come weekly or monthly. It doesn't come quarterly. It doesn't come biannually. It doesn't come yearly. I mean, there are certain bills that do, like insurance and certain things, but your day-to-day expenses happen day to day. It happens weekly, it happens monthly. And so we're in the habit of doing our cash flow projections from a monthly basis. But then what happens when you hit that monthly goal once or twice? Then we have to focus so much on, okay, I need to hit this monthly goal consistently. But then when you set your income goals from an annual perspective, because that's how we file our taxes, you start to look at your year at a glance, right? So that even if you don't hit, let's say your monthly goal is $5,000 a month, but you made only three, that doesn't mean you can't make up for it by making $7,000 the next month. So technically, you would have made $5,000 between the 2 months. So when you look at it from that yearly perspective or that quarterly perspective, it puts planning income into perspective and also planning expenses, because sometimes we have a really good month and we feel I'm rich, bitch, and we overspend, right? I can't help but think of Dave Chappelle, like when you having a really good month in business, you feel rich, but you really should like set aside money for the next month. Like if you have an overflow, still act as though you're making X amount of dollars. And we get carried away and we splurge and we make these extra purchases we don't need. Now, I want to make a disclaimer. If you do have a boost in income, there's nothing wrong with making investments in your business, right? There's a difference between investments and expenses. So if you are investing in tools that's going to help you work more efficiently, that's going to result in you making more money, then it's worth spending that extra money that you made that month. And spending that extra money does not mean that you have to spend all of the extra money. You could spend half of it. So if you make a surplus of $3,000, then you could invest $1,000. You could invest $1,500 or $2,000 and still set aside some for a rainy day, right? Another thing is you could invest in services. You could invest in coaching. Anything that's going to give you money back is an investment, right? But sometimes we just spend extra, we eat nicer. And, nothing is wrong either with setting a budget as well to splurge. So it's all about finding a balance of what works for you, right? So my first tip and my first thing that I'm doing this year is I set an annual income goal. And then a trick that I learned is to plan your income in launches. So if you decide I'm going to launch 3 times for the year, you know, okay, I'm going to go hard with marketing. And in order for me to make my income goal, so if it's easier for me to break this down in quarters. So let's say, okay, I want to do my quarter from not, well, we can't say January, right? But we could, but we won't, right? Because then if we were to do it like that, then we would be launching January, February, March. We'll be launching at the end of March. Then we'll be all launching at the end of June, and then we'll be launching at the end of July, August, September. Then we'll be launching at the end of September. Then we'll be launching at the end of December. Realistically, people don't launch at the end of December. That's Christmas. You'll be launching before Christmas. So, like everything else, start with the end goal in mind. So, I'm not going to go from the end goal right now, but I'm just going to use this I use that as an example to show you how you can literally break it up like that. I mean, if that works for you, fine, but you figure out when are your ideal times to quote unquote launch your service, right? And we hear the term launch a lot in the online business space, and we're like, well, I don't really have launches. That's okay. It should make sense by the time I'm done, right? So let's say you're launching at the end of, so it's February, March, April. So let's say you're launching in mid-April. So, and you already sold out your spots in the previous year. So now it allows you to plan ahead, and you plan in quarters. So let's say, for example, you want to make $50,000 for the year, right? And you want to launch 4 times for the year. That means, quarterly, right? So 50,000 divided by 4, that means you need to make 12,500 in a launch. And then you work backwards how many spots of different services you're going to mix and match and play. How many of those do I need to sell in order to hit that launch goal? When you do that once, you can rinse and repeat. You may not hit the goal. You might come a little bit low, and you learn lessons from it, and you move and you rinse and repeat. And then when you follow this type of model, that's how you create your predictable monthly income. So what I used to do in the past is I always knew to a T how much of each service I need to sell each month. But that kind of puts you in a rat race perspective. You want to sell certain things out in advance, especially as a service provider. That's how you create predictable income. So okay, instead of needing, for example, okay, I need to sell 4 spots each month, then you realize, okay, so each quarter I need to sell 12 spots each month. So you go in with the mindset, okay, I need to sell 10 to 12, or I need to sell 13, that kind of thing. And then that I have guaranteed income for the foreseeable 2 to 3 months. So that is one thing I am doing differently this month, because now I have a clear, concrete way to hit my annual revenue, because now I'm looking at things from a more holistic bird's eye view, right? And it actually feels a lot more doable to hit that annual revenue and consistent income every month when you look at it as mini launches, mini quarterly launches, right? So you could probably launch 3 times for the year, but that would just mean that it's every 4 months versus every 3 months. So you figure out and you work out how you want to mix and match for that to work for you, right? You decide. that all depends on your audience, your customers, your industry, and what works for you and the time of the year and when you have a boost in income. You use those things to your advantage. So that is one of these visions, plans, and goals I have for the year. So I wanted to reset this episode just a tad because I realized when re-listening to the episode that I forgot some crucial points, and I wanted to structure this episode in a particular way, but I didn't want to throw the entire episode away either. So here's what I want to reset the episode to. So let's go. Right. So visions, dreams, and goals. So now that we went over my income goal and strategy, and I share that with you, that you can take that and apply that into your business as well, I wanted to reset this episode and break up the goals into personal and business goals, right? So I am committed, one, to getting the content out there, especially when I am feeling like sometimes you're just in a zone and you just feel it. And sometimes it's just really hard to just schedule that energy for 1 p.m. at night when it's perfect to record. So you're going to have to put up with the dogs. If you hear kids, it is what it is. I have to make peace with it. And you'll probably hear me say that on the episode multiple times, not this episode, but the podcast multiple times. I've said this in the past. I mean, I would really like things to be perfect, but we don't live in a perfect world. So, personal. I'm breaking this up now into personal and business goals because I feel like this is super important. Like so often in business, and you guys know I'm super guilty that forget that I'm a person. I am an individual separate to business. And it was because business took a mental health toll. I then realized, oh my goodness, I am neglecting the fact that I am a person outside of business, and that's nobody else's fault but mine. So, with all of that being said, my personal goals are more structured. So, as I would have mentioned in a previous episode, or maybe this is a episode already recorded but not published yet, I can't remember. um, I would have shared at some point that I am a firm believer and advocate of building your business around your lifestyle. That is why we get into business. All right. If you forgot your why, I'm pretty sure it's because you wanted to pursue something. And for most of us, it's because you share that similar value with me, which is I believe that we shouldn't craft our life and our lifestyle around our jobs. And it should be the other way around. And the best way to do that is through entrepreneurship. So, from day one of being full time in my business back in 2016, my kids would have been a different age and I would have had a routine. So my routine and my structure is always ever evolving. And it's only until the madness hits and I realize that I am not in control and I'm stressed out and I'm behind on deadlines or I'm cranky and very snippy. That's when I realize there's a loss of structure and I'm not in my routine and I'm not centered. I'm feeling, a certain type of way. And then sometimes you just have to mourn previous structures. So at one point in time, I used to wake up 4 a.m., 5 a.m., and I would have me time. I'd do journaling. I would light my candles and I'll do my meditation and I'll have that time with me. But life changed in such a way where that routine is I guess like the best way to describe it without getting too much into my personal business is that it got interrupted. It got interrupted and I just struggle to get back into that routine. But that doesn't mean that I need to abandon that self time together. Like I have to have it. I need to have that time. And I believe all of us as individuals, we need to have that time in the morning at the beginning of our day to really help us get grounded. We are more positive, we're more productive, we're more pleasant people, we're more confident. We it does wonders for our mental health, and how that affects everybody, it's different, but it does wonders for mental health. What that looks like for you would vary from person to person. And I know for me, and when it comes to my mental health and being on my A game and having a really, you know, really great mindset, because we know that we need to have our mindset. Our mindset is the first thing to achieving our goals in our business and taking our businesses to the next level. And I mean, this episode is all about visions, dreams, and goals. Another aspect of like not having structure and mental health is the total opposite, which is stress. So structure leads directly straight into my time with my kids. And speaking of kids, one is at the door, pushing the door. No, you need to return. The chair's there for a reason. Thank you. Anyway, where was I? So, time with kids, time with kids. So, that's like a prime example. So, I do feel a lot of mom guilt sometimes, but then at the same time, I'm super frustrated because I am the breadwinner in the household, right? It is what it is. And as such, I need to work. And as is, I have a luxury. These kids have a luxury. The luxury is that they get to be in my presence all day. I might not be mentally present all the time, but most kids have don't see their parents for hours and hours. And I feel like they really do take that for granted. But anyway, I feel this guilt, and I know that today I was like reminded that I have to recreate my schedule again. I have to create a clear, like I have to separate my day. So for me, it's very hard to be like, okay, 1 hour for work, 1 hour for kids, 1 hour for work, and in and out. That doesn't work for me, but I need to separate it. And they're at the age where I can go extended hours to get work done in my office, and they can occupy themselves otherwise. So I was sitting here today thinking about it and how I'm going to structure it. And I start like at the beginning of every year we reset. So at the beginning of 2020, I reset and I figured out, okay, this is the structure that works for me. But then here in comes COVID, and then I had to change the structure again. And now, beginning of 2021, we're still in a pandemic, but the structure that I would have set then doesn't work for me because I have to reset my structure based also on what my client roster currently looks like, right? And my personal goals is to ensure that I remain a certain level of balance, right? I know they say work life balance is a myth, and I agree with it. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't strive for it. It doesn't mean that we don't create something to work with. And balance is just another way to say prioritize, because that's what they say. Work life balance does not exist, it's a myth. It's just a matter of priorities. But how do you prioritize? You have to create a structure on how to prioritize. So it's like tomatoes, we're like saying the same thing. And like I said before, my next personal goal is to make time for self non negotiable. And that is daily time for self, daily, morning and evening. You need to set yourself up for the day successfully by spending time with yourself, nurturing yourself, and giving yourself what you need. Then you give yourself to the world. And that is clients, kids, friends, parents, all of those things come after. And then you need time to yourself in the evening to decompress. Like I value silence so much. Do you hear that? It's beautiful. Right. So, and then in order for me to have gotten to this place of these personal goals that are very simple, they're very simple. I just want more structure. I want to create more balance in my life. I want to give myself time for self. And really and truly, they might seem like very minor, simple things, but there are really three main categories, right? So, time for self means I get time to journal. I get time to write my affirmations. I get time to work on my goals. I get time to read and center myself. Like, there's so much that goes into time for self. There's so much that goes into creating more structure, because with more, I really also, by the way, side note, structure, I officially started homeschooling my son, and that is something I may discuss in another podcast episode. It's not about my kids. And when I say homeschooling, because I know we throw around the term homeschooling all willy-nilly, but homeschooling and online schooling is two different things. Online schooling is schooling at home. Online schooling is schooling at home, but there's an external institution, and homeschooling is you the parent set the curriculum. You are in charge. You don't have to follow any specific curriculum and guidelines. Well, there are guidelines to homeschooling, but we will dive into that in another episode. I'm very new to it, so I do not want to dive too much into it in this episode. So maybe in a couple weeks, I will have a lot more to contribute where that is concerned. So more on that on another episode, but I definitely do plan to address it because I know there are moms listening who want to know more about that. So that is my personal goals in a nutshell. The other thing, so now to wrap up my business goals, aside from the obvious income goals that we all have and the strategy, which we already covered in the first part of this episode, is to continue to step into yourself. Right? For me, it's just really coming into your own more and more. So if you are not a personal brand, building a business, and you're mostly a business brand, for you, that might mean growing the business more, getting the business brand more recognizable, and just having the business brand on its own come into its own. For a personal brand, the two are kind of intertwinable. So for me, it's really just me coming into my own and just owning my lane, owning my space, and focus. So, with that being said, my business goals can be simply outlined as I am available for more collaborations. um, the term, I was a bit wary to say that publicly and say I'm available for collaborations based on my past experiences with collaborations. And I know I would have vented to some friends in business where I'm like, no, I'm not doing any more collaborations. No, 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 no. People are so selfish. People are only about themselves. And, you know, I think with establishing boundaries, which we'll touch on that in another episode that's coming up, I don't want to just exit out completely, so I'm selectively available for collaborations. So like if you find that walls are up, that is just me protecting my space, my energy, and my time with all due respect. The other thing I'm available for is speaking engagements, more interviews, and press. These things are non negotiables, and this is something that I believe everyone needs to have on their list of business goals all of the time. Like these are evergreen goals, because if you are building a brand and you're not just hustling and you're not just, you know, running a business, like some people just open a grocery store, a corner store, but they're not really trying to turn that into the next Massy. Like that's how you differentiate the difference between a brand and a business, right? You're not trying to build anything long term. You're not trying to create a legacy and you're not trying to make this name for yourself. That's a brand. You're making a name for yourself. And in order to do that, you have to create your own PR. So, hence the engagements, the interviews, and the press. As previously mentioned, one of my goals are, well, the obvious booking out my VIP days in launches per quarter. And each quarter, if you do the math, would come up to being about 10 to 12 spots per quarter. So, let me make some bold statements. So, you hear people say, I'm here to help 100 women, blah, 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 blah. So, you know what? Let's multiply that. So, how many women do I want to help for the year if I look at it from that perspective? That's 40 women for the year. 40 to 48, right? However, I actually want to have less spots per quarter because I want to have less spots per month. So in order to do that and still hit my income goals, then the price would need to go up. So for now, each quarter has about 10 to 12 spots, but the goal is to get that down to about 5 to 7 spots. So that means the price will, with time, increase. And then when the time is right, the next part will be rolling out level 2 of, rolling out the next level, which is going from just the one-on-one VIP intensive format to the group version of a VIP intensive experience. So obviously in a group version experience, the deliverables will be tad different, but the outcome and objective will always remain the same, which is to take you from basic to branded. All right. So if you haven't already, go ahead and download my ebook that outlines my signature framework, the complete brand system that will really show you how to launch your brand online to thrive, especially in 5 simple steps. All right. So I will catch you guys on the next episode, and be sure to subscribe to this podcast that you don't miss an episode, and be sure to rate this podcast 5 stars and leave a review. And my favorite thing, which is if you enjoy this podcast, screenshot it, share it to your Instagram stories, and tag me so that I know you shared it, who shared it, you enjoyed it, and that I could show you some love over on my Instagram stories.